Good evening and welcome to CityTalks. Your MC this evening is the CEO of Emergent Global and author of The Leading Edge. She's renowned for driving transformative initiatives in leadership, development, diversity, and innovation across corporate, non-profit, and public sectors, and for empowering leaders worldwide to navigate change and drive real-world impact. Would you please welcome Holly Ransom.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Holly Ransom. I am so excited to get to serve as your MC for this evening. Thank you all so much for being here. Welcome to tonight's City Talk. I choose Sydney. What is driving Sydney's future prosperity? Tonight, we're of course on the land of the Gadigal, part of the Eora Nation, and I want to begin by paying my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as acknowledging all Indigenous peoples here joining us in conversation tonight. As your host, I'm going to be joined over the course of our evening with some of Sydney's truly most inspiring innovators to discuss some really big questions. What is driving Sydney's future prosperity? Why Sydney? What are the opportunities that Sydney offers from a global and from a local perspective? And how can we leverage Sydney's truly unique assets into the future and make sure that the next decade is even more inclusive and prosperous for all? We're going to look at the vision and the 4 outcomes of the City of Sydney's new economic development strategy for 2025 to 2035 and hear from groundbreaking Sydney leaders who are working day in, day out to bring these outcomes to life. Soon we're going to hear from the Lord Mayor of Sydney, Clover AO, and be joined by Zareh, Nalbandian and Adam Spencer as they discuss how Sydney has become the headquarters for world-class and Academy Award-winning computer-generated imagery. We'll also be hearing from Fenella Kernebone, Head of Conferences at South by Southwest Sydney. Fenella's going to talk to us about why Sydney was chosen, of all the cities in the world, as the only city outside of the US to be given this incredible opportunity to host South by Southwest. And what an important economic opportunity it is for Sydney. And why some of the bold ideas for the future, what experiments can we expect to come as the South by Southwest journey continues? As you can get a sense, it is quite a lineup. We're going to have a wonderful series of provocations and conversation. Tonight's goal, importantly, is to share information and inspiration. You'll meet some truly inspiring people. But also, importantly, it's an invitation to share ideas and to join in the conversation on Sydney's vision for a thriving economy that is inclusive and prosperous for all. At the end of proceedings, I'll give you some information about exactly how you can contribute your thoughts and ideas to this conversation. Now, before we get underway, very important to get a couple of housekeeping matters out of the way. In case of emergency, we will hear an announcement over the PA. Please follow the instructions that are made at that time from the venue staff who will direct us all to where we need to go. If you haven't already, please make sure you turn your phone to silent so we don't have any interruptions through the course of proceedings. We'll also be taking some photos tonight to capture the event, be able to storytell about it in some of the communications from the City of Sydney. So please raise your hand now if you are not comfortable being captured in any photos, and the City of Sydney team will make a note of that. There will be a recording of tonight's event, which will be closed captioned and available on the City of Sydney's webpage and on the City Talks page. And I invite you, in addition to sharing your insights or reflections on tonight on social media platform, to think about directing others to watch the video and to share in the conversation after the fact. Our fantastic Auslan interpreters are here with us once again tonight. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Danny Reid and Will Tapp. Thank you so much for your contribution this evening. With that, let's get this action-packed program underway. First, can you join me in welcoming Auntie Joan Bell from the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council. Welcome, Auntie Joan.
Thank you. It's a little bit dark out there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. Good evening, peoples. Thank you. I'd just like to know that everybody's still on the same page as me, you know? And I'd like to let you know, to get going, and I'd like to make an acknowledgement to the Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council, because Metro LALC is the body for the protection and preservation of all Aboriginal culture and heritage within its boundaries. That includes Sydney CBD and surrounding local 24 areas, from Canterbury Bankstown to Cessnock, and we are proud to acknowledge all traditional custodians and owners for this place we now call Sydney. Just a little bit about me. My name is Joan Bell. My family and friends know me simply as Auntie Ding. I grew up as Ding Bell, so it rhymes. I am a proud Wiradjuri Gadigal woman. Wiradjuri from my mum. My mum was a very proud Wiradjuri lady who come from a little mission in Peak Hill, well outside Peak Hill in the central west New South Wales, called Bulgandra Mine, and we all know it as Red Dust. My dad was the most staunchest and bravest of Gadigal warriors. I am a mother of 10, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, and a great-great-grandmother of 82 grandchildren. Thank you. Thank you. So you see, I'm filling my paddock. I challenge you. My bloodline is here to stay, and my oldies are very proud of me. I spent my younger years in Peak Hill and Sydney, Gadigal, Wiradjuri, Gadigal. I still go walkabout. There's times when half my kids don't know where I am, and those times I love. Mate, when you've got a lot of kids, you want to get away. Especially when they say to you, Nan, how much money you got? So I do a get. My Gadigal ancestor was a local custodian who was taken to Parramatta's Natives Institute, and in 1845 was taken by Reverend John Cartwright to Pajong, Gundungurra country near Gunning, New South Wales, to work. We honour our Gadigal Eora elders and leaders, including Barangaroo, Pemaway, and many others who fought the first boat people who landed in Sydney Cove in 1770 and 1778. My respects to Gadigal elders, past and present. We honour our matriarchs and patriarchs. Because of them, we can. My respects to all elders and leaders from other First Nations and other nations here tonight. We listen. We were taught very early in our lives. As soon as we could understand anything, we were taught around a campfire to listen. You listen. You don't talk. You just listen to what the oldies are saying, because they know. And if they don't know, they get it from their oldies. So the oldies talk, you listen. They will let you know when it's time for you to ask a question. So we listen to the oldies. You call them ancestors, we call them oldies. They come back. The spirit of the oldies comes back. They come back in all shapes and forms. And they come back to show us the right path and to take care of us. And they come back to protect us and tell us it's okay. And if we don't listen, we don't sleep so good at night. I've had some really rough nights. I've learned when my spirit of the elders talks to me, I listen now. I listen. This welcome to country is made in the spirit of peace and harmony with all peoples of modern Sydney. Our aim as local custodians is to establish an atmosphere of mutual respect through the acknowledgement of our ancestors, of my oldies, and the recognition of our right to declare our special place in the pre- and post-history of the Sydney region. Respect is taking responsibility for the past, the present, and the future. Evidence of our occupation, ownership, and nationhood can be seen everywhere throughout our country. Our signature is in the land, not just in our DNA. And respect, we were taught at an early age, you must respect, because with respect comes love. And respect is in the fire that warms the camp and the possum skin cloak that shelters all. If you don't respect the fire, you will get burned. And the fire could be a lot of things in your life. If you don't respect your life and what you do in it, you do get burned. The possum skin, the kangaroo skin, and various other skins. My people learned a long time ago how to cure these skins. That was our blankets and our clothing. And we only kill just enough to fill our bellies. We don't overkill, and we don't hunt for the fun of it. And respect is in the rivers, the sea, and the breeze quietly moving through country. As a kid, we were taught around a campfire. The breeze says it all. Our oldies would say, close your eyes. You sit there and close your eyes. And you listen, because the breeze talks. It touches your cheek and it blows your hair. And that's the oldies touching you and telling you everything is okay. We're going to make it. With this welcome, we ask that you all will respect the law of the land and the law of the country. Give honour, be respectful, be polite, be gentle and patient with all. Respect is everything living and growing. Please, look after the land, sea and rivers. Then the land, sea and rivers will look after you. Respect, I am so big on respect, you must. respect. If you can't respect, there's not much of a character that you are made up of. So respect shapes us and lifts up the people. And this is my welcome to you. From the heart, I welcome you to the land of my Gadigal ancestors, to the land of my Gadigal oldies, my Eora Gadigal country. Welcome to my country. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Joan. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Auntie Joan, for that truly beautiful welcome. One of the lines that stuck with me in the welcome Auntie Joan just delivered there was the phrase where she said, "Because of them we can." I thought that was such a fitting way to contextualise the conversation we're going to have tonight. I look around this room when the lights were up moments ago, and I see many faces who are responsible for shaping Sydney so significantly to this point. Many who aren't able to join us tonight, many who came before. And the conversation we can have about the ambition for Sydney's future is because of them, those that have gone before and those that have contributed up to this point. So a great call to acknowledge the place we begin on, and thank you one more time for Auntie Joan for that beautiful welcome. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker this evening, Sydney's longest-serving mayor, Clover Moore AO. Through her public life, Clover has been a champion of progressive policies, and the City of Sydney has proven credentials to lead and to support change. The City of Sydney, of course, has a new economic development strategy for 2025 to 2035, which is going to guide this next wave of innovation, as well as growth inspired by creativity and technology. Here to tell us more about how this strategy will deliver the right conditions for such innovation and to lead to a more equitable and sustainable city, please welcome the Lord Mayor of Sydney, Clover Moore AO. You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming tonight on this cold night. I'm sure we're all rugged up, and there were strong instructions given that the heating had to be on in the town hall. Our last City Talk got a bit cold, I thought. Some of you who are here might have thought that too. So I'm really pleased to welcome you to Centennial Hall for this important discussion on Sydney's economic future and making the next decade more inclusive and prosperous for all. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation and pay my respects to the elders past and present, and I'd like to thank Auntie Joan, or Auntie Ding, for her welcome. And I also acknowledge the people of the many nations who live in our city. I want to especially welcome Michael Rose of the Committee for Sydney and Duncan Edgehill and Penny Graham from Altrac, the Sydney's Business, Economic Development and COVID Recovery Advisory Panel for their insights and their advice. And I want to thank our wonderful MC and our inspiring speakers, all experts in their field. I want to acknowledge Deputy Lord Mayor Robert Koch and City of Sydney councillors and the City of Sydney CEO Monica Baroni and our fabulous staff. Sydney is a smart city with a strong economy and a highly skilled workforce, reputable public institutions, great coffee and outdoor dining. The world knows you can do business here. Since 2004, the economy of the city's local government area has grown by $64 billion, or 82%. Jobs have increased by 162%, with a sizable shift to high-value knowledge jobs, and the population has almost doubled. The success has been framed by the city's long-term overarching strategy, Sustainable Sydney, and our economic development strategy. And on every metric, we have exceeded targets. Some of our key policies and investments under the strategies have been the Central Sydney Planning Strategy, which unlocks almost 3 billion square metres of employment floor space with approved developments such as those on the corner of Pitt and Spring Streets, O'Connell Street and Hunter Street Metro Station, all developments that will have net zero building standards, design excellence, that will contribute significantly to affordable housing and will not overshadow important public spaces like Martin Place and the Botanic Gardens. Our investments include the $300 million transformation of George Street into a world-class boulevard and with a clean, efficient light rail, which has resulted in $8 billion of private investment and an uplift to the entire city. And our $22 billion Green Square urban renewal, 3.5 kilometres from here, which has converted an inner city, polluted and flooded industrial zone that had 2,500 residents into a sustainable, livable and high-density residential neighbourhood with already 33,000 residents and a further 30,000 expected by 2030. As the city evolves and new challenges and opportunities emerge, we have updated our policies and plans so we continue to drive Sydney's future prosperity. Our new economic development strategy, 2025 to 2035, currently open on exhibition and open for comment, focuses on an innovation-led economy which is sustainable, inclusive and provides for great local experiences. Developed with a strong evidence base and in consultation, the strategy creates opportunities for investments to unlock 200,000 new jobs by 2036, with 70% of them in the knowledge and innovation-intensive industries in the southern part of our city. This means we will continue investing in Sydney as the best place to work, live, study, visit, create and invest, so we can retain our successful businesses and talent and attract the world's best. Work with all levels of government and industry to strengthen the conditions for the jobs of the future and for innovation-led businesses to succeed and to connect globally. And to support the microeconomics of innovative clusters and startups and support inclusive and innovative enterprises and local businesses building skills and developing new technologies. With light rail, we're not starting from scratch. We've started advocating and campaigning for the extension of light rail from Parramatta Road to Green Square via Central Station, just as we did for the CBD and the South East Light Rail. This is more than just a transport link. The economic potential of extending the light rail is enormous. We are talking about mass transit that will connect a workforce of from some of our highest density suburbs like Green Square to Australia's most important innovation precinct, Tech Central. Parramatta Road is ground zero for Tech Central, which spans from Haymarket, Ultimo, Camperdown to South and North Everleigh and into Surrey Hills. This is the precinct where the New South Wales Government will target technology jobs. And workers need quick and easy access to education, medical and research institutes, high-tech businesses, workshops, labs, studios and other workplaces. The value of Sydney's startup sector is already estimated to be $102 billion, attracting around $10 billion in investments each year. Tech Central has facilities such as the UTS Biologics Innovation Faculty, a bioprocessing teaching and training facility designed to upskill and scale up biopharmaceutical projects. The Sydney Nanoscience Hub, purpose-built to explore the nature of matter, design new technologies and engineer them into some of the best clean room and nanofabrication facilities in the world. The RPA Surgical and Robotic Training Centre, the Southern Hemisphere's only training institute for robotic surgery, and Sydney University's Sydney Biomedical Accelerator, currently in development and which we will hear more about tonight. There is no doubt that the Sydney CBD skyline is expanding south. And collaboration between Tech Central and Sydney's global economic corridor is key to our future prosperity because it will drive innovation, specialisation, commercialisation of new products, exports and overall productivity. To show the city's strong support, I have proposed that the city will contribute $100 million for widening footpaths, planting trees, installing new street furniture, paving and lighting alongside the light rail to create beautiful spaces for people and businesses in our local area, if the New South Wales Government commits to this project. As we all know, we're in a cost of living crisis, which is especially affecting people who are already our most vulnerable. The light rail will trigger investment in a mix of desperately needed new housing right along the corridor. At the City, we do all we can for housing supply. Within just 7 years, the City met 71% of our 20-year target of 56,000 homes set by the former government, and we are equally committed to meeting our new housing targets mandated by the Labor government. We provide affordable housing and help to reduce homelessness. We help organisations like OzHarvest distribute food. We also provide low-cost or free services, including computers and internet access. And our residential rates are among the lowest in the metropolitan area, and they're free for pensioners. And as we are in a cost of living crisis, such investments help to address the inequality and the overall economic prosperity. The best city in the world needs to be affordable with opportunities for all our residents. Increasing equity for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people is an important part of reconciliation, as well as local economic development. As part of the Eora journey, we have recently procured and renovated a landmark building in Redfern for an Aboriginal Knowledge and Cultural Centre. We continue to host Sydney's annual NAIDOC Festival and other events. And we're investing $11.5 million in Yananurala. That's a 9-kilometre walk along Sydney Harbour, highlighting Aboriginal history and culture and creating a new Indigenous visitor experience. Since 2015, we have invested $2.4 million in Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employment and training, economic development and culture. We have a $500,000 a year fund for increased self-determination and equity. We are increasing Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander employees at the City, and we're spending close to $3.6 million annually with Indigenous businesses. We believe in community wealth building, using our procurement power to engage local businesses so the benefits of growth are retained in our community. Along with direct spending, we have also been investing in our local businesses with more than $2.4 million in grants last year to unlock innovation. We continue our progress to build the confidence, networks and skills of budding business owners, and we support incubators and accelerators by providing affordable workspaces and programs to emerging entrepreneurs. One of our newest startup hubs is the Greenhouse Climate Tech Hub in the first 3 floors of 180 George Street in the Salesforce building. It provides workspace for up to 500 innovators, ecopreneurs, investors, climate groups and researchers to collaborate on solutions to the world's most serious climate problems. And it has been made possible by the City's $31 million investment. We view environmental leadership as a competitive advantage, and there are significant and direct economic benefits in the City's commitment to net zero emissions across our local government area by 2035. Buying 100% renewable electricity from wind and solar farms in regional New South Wales is reducing our annual emissions by 24,000 tonnes and saves us $500,000 a year. Switching our streetlights to LED is saving the City and Ausgrid almost $2 million a year. And so to conclude, every day, more than 1 million people choose Sydney as a place to work, visit, study, shop, or for culture and entertainment. Our new economic development strategy will keep them coming. It is a strategy that unlocks innovation and supports a wide range of investments, so our economy is more sustainable, fair and inclusive. After all, what is a city but the people? We will now screen a short video from the proponents for the new light rail, Altrac, so you can picture a future Parramatta Road. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. I hope you're inspired by tonight.
In the heart of Australia's biggest city, a new opportunity emerges. This is not just transportation, this is transformation. It's housing, it's jobs, it's connection. Introducing Parramatta Road to Green Square Light Rail. A new line for Sydney, connecting the inner west to Sydney's centre via universities, hospitals and tech hubs. Then onto the growing urban precincts of Redfern, Waterloo, Zetland and Green Square, turning a neglected artery into a community, attracting new housing in places people want to live, and connecting Australia's most dense residential district to jobs and opportunity sustainably. This is central to Green Square reimagined and Parramatta Road reborn. Join our vision for the next stage of Sydney's light rail network, Parramatta Road to Green Square Light Rail.
Want to be able to see the way that the vision comes to life. Thank you, Lord Mayor, so much for talking us through so many aspects of the strategy, but also for your infectious passion for this great city. It's hard not to get captivated every time the Lord Mayor gets up and shares not only the reality of what's currently happening in this great city, but certainly what's to come. To continue our conversation and I guess continue particularly to explore the element of innovation, our next speaker is someone who's a true creative genius who not only calls this city home, but whose business very much does as well. Zareh Nalbandian is the co-founder of Animal Logic and the CEO not only of Animal Logic Entertainment, but also Truant Pictures. For over 30 years, Zareh has been the CEO of Animal Logic and has pushed the boundaries in doing so of filmmaking. He's an innovator and he's an inspiration across the world to everyone in his field. And he's a particular pioneer of computer-generated imagery. You might know him for his Academy Award-winning screen animation and movies, no doubt, that are very familiar to you, that were all imagined right here and brought to life in Sydney, using local creative talent, groundbreaking computer-generated imagery, technology, and Sydney city locations. Let's take a look at this incredible body of work, and then Zareh Nalbandian will be joined in conversation by Adam Spencer.
Oh my goodness.
Wink at him?
There's a lot of things they can do that you don't know about. A lot of things.
So Zareh Nalbandian, thank you so much for joining us for City Talks.
My pleasure.
Can I just quick disclosure out front? As a maths nerd from way back, I can still remember the moment when I saw the opening credits for The Matrix and that decimal code just racing across the screen and then exploding up. 25 years ago, blew my mind, still holds up very well today.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's the 25th anniversary of the first Matrix movie. And I'm always chuffed when I think about the popular culture that we exported to the world from here in Sydney. That Matrix code cascading screensaver was on every second computer around the world.
So the Animal Logic story is a fascinating one. It starts 1991, you and a co-founder in an apartment in Crow's Nest with some very special peach-coloured carpet. 30 years later, one of the most respected creative institutions in the world. Very quick dot points from back before The Matrix to how we got here. What are the major milestones on the journey?
Well, my business partner at the time, Chris Godfrey, and I founded the company together, and we had a very basic philosophy and business plan, which was do great work with great people and good things will happen. Okay. That was the entirety of our business plan. And luckily we had, 10 or 12 people who saw it in the same way as we did, like-minded people who are great creatives and technologists, and together we came together to create Animal Logic. And really, that's where we started, and that vision stayed true all the way through the 30 years.
You started in commercials, then started to dabble in film, is that right? Was it the technology that grew that allowed you to grow?
Yeah, in the 90s, I think one of the things about Animalogic is we've always evolved, we've always been innovative, but we've also been able to pivot as technology got more powerful and different markets opened up. So in the 90s, we'd work on commercials that had bigger budgets than Australian independent feature films do these days. But then as technology became more powerful, we started working in film visual effects, early days like in films like Face Off, Mouse Hunt, but of course the Matrix movie put us on the map because it went on to win the Oscar for Best Visual Effects.
The Matrix, Babe, Happy Feet, there's a commercial there where Michael Jordan plays the role of a Nike CEO.
I love that.
You could rest on those laurels quite easily, but recently, fascinating developments. Netflix has become involved. Animalogic is now Netflix's animation arm. Animalogic Entertainment continues to work. Truant Films over in LA. A fascinating structure these days.
Well, Happy Feet was the first time that we were able to actually tell a story from beginning to end, thanks to George Miller and his vision for the movie, and trusting us that we could actually build an animation pipeline from scratch in Sydney and actually deliver an amazing animated movie which went on to win the Oscar. And really, I can't ever express my gratitude to George enough for having that trust in an Australian company. But that gave me the taste and the hunger for telling stories, not just working on sequences of other people's stories. And I founded Animalogic Entertainment. And the first film that I produced was a Zack Snyder-directed film, The Legend of the Guardians, The Isles of Ga'Hoole. And from there on, continued to invest in developing IP, developing our stories, and ultimately culminating in making films like Peter Rabbit 1 and Peter Rabbit 2. So the Animalogic Entertainment part is a small team of people who create the ideas and produce the ideas, whereas Animalogic grew to a Canadian, American, Australian animation studio, visual effects studio, hiring and employing hundreds of people at any time.
And Animalogic is now the animation arm of Netflix, while Truant Films based in LA is still telling Australian stories on the big screen?
Correct. So Animalogic Studios has now become the Pixar for Netflix. They're the global animation studio here in Sydney and also in Vancouver. And I'm really proud of that because Netflix will continue to support Animalogic and grow Animalogic and create great job opportunities. And our crew will go on to make amazing films for the world. Animalogic Entertainment and Truant Pictures, which is our live-action indie arm, are based in LA and Sydney. And really, we want to develop films that we can make out of Australia, as well as other parts of the world, and export to the world.
A philosophy that's always been key to you is fostering and nurturing talent in Sydney. Some people might be surprised. Obviously, your production requires incredible technology, but the amount of human, innovative and creative capital that's needed as well is a crucial part of the puzzle, isn't it?
Well, I've always said that finding that perfect intersection between creativity and technology is critical. And often at Animalogic, technologists would drive the creatives with new techniques, and the creatives would drive the technologists needing new techniques and tools. And that's all driven by great people and great talent. And really, I think we've got an amazing set of creative industries here in Sydney, across games, TV, film, experiential, immersive, ever-expanding opportunities for our creative industries. The only thing that would ever hold us back is talent. And so I've always been very committed, as have the whole leadership team of Animalogic, to developing talent in Sydney, homegrown talent.
Not just in theory, you've taken several practical measures to broaden that pipeline, haven't you?
Yeah, we've always had training schemes at Animalogic, where other companies used to have work exported overseas for cheaper labor, which were the menial tasks. We used to go, no, we can train people on those tasks. So we were always very committed to training, but I hope I've been able to take that to the next level, working with UTS, establishing the Animalogic Academy for Animation and Visualization many years ago, which has been a huge success, and to more recently just trying to support educational institutions like NIDA, with 2 scholarships that we support every year, and generally more broadly supporting arts organisations so that we can support emerging artistic talent.
Innovation and creative ability is critical to broadening Sydney's economy more generally, isn't it? We need to position this city as something that can't just trade on a beautiful harbour, incredible dining experiences. We need to be up that sort of value food chain as a city.
I think Sydney has the opportunity to be like a Silicon Valley for great creative talent.
Oh, wow. Tell me more.
Because we have a great location. It's a great place to live.
Mm-hmm.
There's now great transport being developed. I think there's a great sense of creative community coming together. So we want to be a go-to destination for talent from all around the world. And I think we have great government support in place. And we've just got to make sure that we support our creative organisations and our technical organisations to be able to prosper and create those job opportunities.
Because you're a truly international institution now. You could have chosen anywhere in the world to grow into. Why Sydney, and why in particular Animal Logic Entertainment in Tech Central?
Well, Tech Central brings me back to where I grew up. I'm a inner west boy from Canterbury from the 60s when my parents migrated here. I lived in Newtown for 10 years in the 80s. I love the culture that's here, the food that's here, now the connectivity that's here with great transport and how sort of enlivened the inner west is. So I'm really glad to be back here, but also I'm in a community of creatives, and I think that's really important to always have that connectivity.
To see the evolution of place in Sydney, what are your observations about that over the last decade plus?
No, I think that the light rail has transformed the city, and the fact that it's now connected to the inner west and to the inner east is just amazing. And I think that connectivity that it brings between people. And coming back to my point about making Sydney a magnet for great talent, I think that's so critical, to be able to be connected around a city as vibrant as Sydney is, and to kind of elevate that vibrancy through connectivity is just amazing. I think it's been an amazing transformation of Sydney.
We've shown that in other top-end projects as well. The nanoscience and quantum computing going on at the University of Sydney, University of New South Wales has shown in a niche area, if you're good enough, the best people in the world will want to come and work with you.
I agree, and I think that we prove that across so many areas in Australia. I think as Australians we have a great attitude. We'll take on anything. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know, which makes us more adventurous. But I really think we have a pioneering spirit, and you know, creating a hub in Sydney. Like, I'm really committed to, as is the board of the Sydney Film Festival, to establishing a Sydney Screen Centre. Yeah. We're a UNESCO City of Film, and we don't have a screen hub, we don't have a screen centre, we don't have a CityTech. And I feel like the more we can create hubs, whether it's Tech Central or a Sydney Film Centre or Screen Centre, the more we'll attract great talent and the more we'll create creative communities.
Just as a quick aside, the recent explosion we have seen in GPTs and large language AIs, some people say in a couple of years I'll be able to say to my phone, can you generate for me a version of The Matrix set in New York, not Sydney, and can I please be Keanu Reeves? Bang. Does any part of you worry that the industry evolves in a way where these human skills drop back to less important and my phone can just do all the work for me?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. I think what you say is partly true. But will human creatives stop at that, or will they want to push boundaries even further? I think we always have that instinct to innovate and to push boundaries, and hopefully the instinct will be to use those tools for greater innovation as opposed to just resting on the outcome from a computer, because where's the fun in that?
You've spoken about some of the developments that are going to continue to help Animal Logic Entertainment do what it does, but in a broader sense, you seem driven by a desire to leave a legacy. And there was a quote from you, "This is part of my passion going forward. The new chapter of my career is that we give back in any way we can." Tell me more about that.
Well, I feel like as an immigrant kid from the 60s, if you look at the opportunities I've had because of the sacrifices my parents made, but the opportunities I've had as a result of the industry here in Sydney and in Australia, I feel like it's important that I give back and create those opportunities for others, particularly underrepresented people who whether they're refugees or immigrants or First Nations people who just don't get the breaks that other people do. So I really feel committed to creating those opportunities, and I feel like it's in my DNA from how I grew up and where I came from.
We're sitting here in an incredible space. There's classic 60s retro furniture. There's tech moments from across the ages. There's also some wonderful First Nations art. First Nations expression and storytelling is something very important to you, isn't it?
Yes, it does. I'm really passionate about supporting First Nations storytellers and their stories. I think we have such a great opportunity to tell amazing stories that the whole world will want to hear, but also working with First Nations artists and, providing those opportunities for those artists to be seen and heard. I'm personally committed to creating a gallery for First Nations art, a not-for-profit gallery that will be part of our new studios in Camperdown and an old ice cream factory. And creating opportunities for emerging artists to be seen and provide opportunities for them to create work that will help them be recognised.
In an industry like yours that is so creative and involves such incredible technology, I get the impression you can't do it if government's standing in the way. Government can't do it all by itself and say to you, this is what we want you to do. What's the secret to getting that relationship right, to maximising both parties' contribution and output?
It is a balancing act in a way, but I do feel we're really lucky that we get amazing federal and state support for our screen industries. It's not greater than our other jurisdictions around the world, but it gives us a seat at the table so we can compete on our own merits. And I think that's all Australians need, is just the opportunity to be competitive. But also we get great support and from the city of Sydney. I think the thing that we really need right now is locations in which we can create community. Sydney is a very popular place to be. There's a lot of housing being developed, and we need space for creative communities to come together. And I know both the City of Sydney and New South Wales government are focused on that right now, but I think it's critical for us. We talked about community before and transport and connectivity. Creative space is also critical.
Zareh Nalbandian, thank you so much for joining us for City Talks, and best of luck on the 20, 30, 40 years ahead on this incredible journey.
Well, thank you, Adam. Thanks for your time.
What a fantastic conversation. What an incredible body of work, a testament to the innovation and creativity that can come from this fabulous city. Can we one more time thank Zareh Nalbandian and, of course, Adam Spencer. What a brilliant discussion of community, of connection and of creativity. And I love this vision that Zareh painted for the Silicon Valley for creative talent. Continuing our conversation and moving us into the experiential world, we have Fenella Kernebone, who is the head of conference programming for South by Southwest Sydney, a job where she gathers thinkers, creators, innovators for an agenda that sets the scene of the best in technology and innovation, games, music, screen and culture. A conference many of you are no doubt familiar with and interacted with in some capacity last year. Before Fenella joins us, let's take a look at how South by Southwest Sydney inspired us in 2023.
Big deal. This is the first time we've ever done it.
Well, I think it's just the gathering of fantastic minds.
I'm really interested in looking at the game side of things.
For gaming specifically, there's nothing like this here in Sydney, right?
To bring it to South by Southwest, pretty damn cool.
Just the energy in the streets, honestly, it's really inspiring.
Come and see it and feel it, because it's definitely worth your while.
Been such a great opportunity for filmmakers like myself and other filmmakers here.
It's beautiful. It's a great thing that South by is growing into really
great for the younger generation. Get an opportunity to showcase in front of the world.
All these amazing up-and-coming talented individuals and bands.
A brilliant let's start with plenty more to get excited about with what's ahead. Can you join me in welcoming Fenella Kernebone?
Hello, hello. Are we having fun? Hello, everybody. I didn't hear that. Say that again. Are we having fun? Excellent. It's really wonderful to be here, and thank you so much for that warm introduction, Holly. I'm here to talk about South by Southwest Sydney. So in that clip, you saw a number of people speaking, but there was a little snippet of the director of Black Mirror fame, a gentleman called Charlie Brooker at South by Southwest Sydney in that clip. He was an absolute delight to meet and to work with last year. And a little story, when he finished up his keynote session inside the International Convention Centre here in Sydney, he then kindly jumped onto Tumbalong Park stage for an encore chat with Julia Zamiro as part of our free public programming. And when he was asked where was he off to next, a lot of speakers will say, I'm going to go and enjoy the festival, but then they go home, right? But he was genuinely in it. He was all in. He wanted to explore the Tech and Innovation Expo. He was off to the Games Festival. He brought his kids to Australia. He wanted to go to the Screen Festival and was a special guest for the Screen Galas. He wanted to check out some of the music showcases. He was there for a couple of days and he wanted to experience everything. He was our guest, he was one of our keynote speakers, but he was there for inspiration here in Sydney for his own projects. So what is South by Southwest Sydney? I'm going to talk a bit about what it is. It's a tech expo, right? It's a tech and innovation festival. It's a startup pitch. There's a games festival, music and screen festival, and there's a lot of free public programming across the 7 days. Plus there's these incredible activations from the partners in Tumbalong Park, throughout the convention centre, and in fact throughout the entirety of the festival precinct. And my baby, one of the most extensive conference programs that you could see across a full week, rich with panels and talks and workshops and mentor sessions and networking events and business development opportunities. We often describe it with a bit of an analogy of a haircut, the mullet, right? So you've got business at the front and it's party at the back. But it's wrong, because in fact this event is everything, everywhere, all at once. And if you've seen that film, it's absolutely excellent. It coincidentally launched at the renowned Austin event in 2023. So back to Charlie and the event last year, because this is a great experience. On the Tuesday afternoon, as the conference was wrapping up, there was this real buzz, right? I think people had started to kind of figure out what this thing was. People were making their way out the doors to the music festival opening night on a boat just in Darling Harbour. There was a screen festival gala. There was free programming and music in Tumbalong Park. Some people went to New Zealand House to go and watch some hip hop. There were happy hours there and networking drinks. You get it. Like, people kind of had settled in and worked it out and were in for the ride. And we're all coming back the next day for the conference to gain some insights. And my point here is that an event like this brings everyone together. Tech sector, innovation, startups, design, business leaders, finance industry, advertising and marketing, music, film, media, city planners, creatives, government sector, educators, professionals across the business and creative industries, all together in one place for a singular experience, not siloed. This is really key. Together, about the cross-pollination of ideas. Thousands of events, thousands of speakers and talks in 1 week, and with one simple goal: to discover what is next, to showcase our thinking to the world stage, but with an overarching theme of connection. So one of the questions I was asked to address today was, why Sydney, right? So as Colin Daniels, our managing director, always says, when this question is asked of him, like, why not? Sydney has it all. But it might help to get a bit of a quick potted history of what South by Southwest is. It started in Austin, SXSW, if you see the words around, more than 35 years ago, thus the name, South by Southwest. It was a music festival when it began, and it grew organically over the decades to become one of the most extraordinary events globally for the creative, tech and professional industries. A couple of examples. This is where Twitter, before it got hijacked by Elon Musk, was actually launched, right? Barack Obama's been on the main stage. Billie Eilish was discovered there when she was 14 years old. Chance the Rapper, who you saw in that video, he got his big break at South by Southwest. And Full Circle was one of our music keynotes last year. A place for discovery. And it quite literally takes over the city of Austin. Streets of activations, hundreds and hundreds of venues and conference sessions. The world gathers there to share ideas, to network, to do business, to take meetings, and to eat barbecue. I know, right? It's a beat in the March calendar where global industries come together in the Northern Hemisphere. And what's really key is that you don't buy tickets to a single event or a day, you buy a badge and you get to go to everything. And guess what? As you know, we have this here in our city of Sydney. The opportunity that we have in Sydney is incalculable. Actually, I'm joking, we can actually calculate it. There is data. 287,014 people across the entire event during the week in 2023. There was about 21,000 in the conference. I can imagine it's going to be very similar in 2024. This is the beat in our calendar year, each October, where Australia, New Zealand, Asia Pacific and global voices and industries can come together in the Southern Hemisphere. This is our one. The economic opportunity for Sydney and for Australia is vast. Strengthening B2B networks, fostering the growth of new emerging industries, attracting talent, enhancing global positioning and brand, and of course elevating the visitor economy through people coming back again for business or for leisure. It's an experience that you can't get anywhere else, I truly believe, but here. And it helps to continue to position Sydney on the global stage. It's, as like Zareh was saying, it shows the aspect of Sydney that we don't often get to tell, that we might not always see in the tourism brochures and the campaigns. We often always see how Sydney-siders just love a party, which we do, but we also love live music. We have deep, deep creative roots in film, in games, and in the innovation space, in the tech sector. And we are the location for thought leadership, business and expertise. As Zareh said, it's a bit like Silicon Valley for the creative talent. I like to think of it a little bit like a magic sauce for the future of opportunity, essentially. And it's also about the moments. It's about, you're waiting in line to go and see a session and you might meet your next client. You might exchange business cards. You might collaborate on a project nest. You might get inspiration from many of the innovators and creators that you discover across the event. The business and professional development and mentoring that you see is really critical, as well as seeing some really big names and some big acts. And I think one of the most important things to remember, it's just fun. Like, we all need a bit of fun too. So that's South by Southwest Sydney. We've already announced 500. There's 500 things on the schedule, and that doesn't even touch the sides. For the music, the conference, the games, the sessions, the speakers, there are hundreds and hundreds more things to come. We've already announced keynotes like the author of Stolen Focus, Johan Hari, human rights lawyer Jennifer Robinson, Australian astronaut Catherine Bonnell-Pegg is joining us, the CEO of Twitch, Dan Clancy, the CEO of the global tech company called Razer is joining us too, the global CMO of TikTok, Sophia Hernandez. That's just a tiny taste of what you can see within the entire event, and also some people that you're going to be seeing on stage tonight, including Holly, actually. Who's great. So in conclusion, I know that Sydney is beautiful. I love this city so much, but as you know, and as I know, it has brains and we can show it. And I really do hope to see you this October. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fenella, for a vision that included everything from mullets to magic sauce. And thank you as well for the incredible work you're doing as master of all things programming, for the incredibly ambitious agenda. I mean, more than 500 things already in the calendar for this October. Get excited for what's to come. Can you join me in thanking one more time Fenella Kernebone? Thank you so much. We are now going to jump into a panel conversation, and joining me is a true set of experts across innovation, sustainability, entrepreneurship, science, curation, civic leadership, and one of the makers of the most delicious croissants on earth too. We truly have a diverse and eclectic panel of people to help us digest this fabulous economic strategy for the City of Sydney. So please welcome to the stage, and hold your applause to the end if you can, as excited as I know you will be to applaud each and every one of them as they come up. Joining me, Dr. Kate Reid, the founder and co-owner of LUNE Croissanterie. That was a test. We didn't pass. That's all right. Stick with me. Joining Kate is Emily McDaniel, Curator, Writer and Educator of the Aura Journey for the City of Sydney. Oh, you found a loophole. You decided to woo instead. Well played. I like it. Joining Emily and Kate, Creel Price, co-founder of Investible and the CEO and founder of the Greenhouse Climate Tech Hub. Joining the panel, Eamon Waterford, the CEO of the Committee for Sydney, and last but by no means least, Professor Michael J. Biercuk, the CEO and founder of Q-CTRL. Now can you join me in welcoming this fabulous panel? Excellent. Brilliant. You did very well. Now we have, as you can see, an incredible panel, an incredible array of expertises and contributions into this conversation, an incredible ambition to try and give a broad cross-section of perspectives on this document that I truly commend to you, this strategic vision for the future of Sydney's prosperity. Eamon, I'm going to kick off with you as someone who leads the CEO job for the Committee for Sydney here. This strategy sort of, for me, makes a clear acknowledgement that the things that drove prosperity over the last several decades are not going to be what underpins it moving forward. I'm interested for you as someone who thinks deeply about this on a daily basis. What do you see as the key challenges facing cities and Sydney specifically?
Yeah, well, I think we've got three big challenges facing Sydney that all intertwine into our economic future. One of them is the transformation of the economy. We've been very reliant on a whole bunch of sectors that are probably going to go away. You know, this state has been very reliant on digging coal out of the ground, for example. But the people that buy our coal are going to stop buying our coal quite soon. Whether we like it or not, it's going to happen. That then lends itself to another big challenge, of course, climate change. We think of climate change as something that at the moment is investing in energy transition in the regions, but the effects of climate change, the consequences of climate change-induced natural disaster will be felt by cities like Sydney. In fact, Sydney will be hit from all sides with floods and fires and storm surges and heat waves and a whole bunch of challenges. And then the third one, I think, will be no surprise to anybody here. It's pretty unaffordable to get housing in this city. In fact, we shouldn't sort of beat around the bush. Sydney is one of the most unaffordable cities in the world. It's probably about the second, maybe even the first least affordable city in the world. This isn't normal, the experience that we're having right now of housing. This is genuinely problematic. How that relates to our economic future and an economic strategy, well, if it's too unaffordable to live here, people won't create great companies here. People won't take risks. If housing is unaffordable, it's really hard for them to quit their job and start a new company,
be able to have the Silicon Valley of creativity if we can't have a creative community.
Indeed, and I mean, I think people often forget that the genesis of Silicon Valley was it started because it was really cheap to rent a house in Silicon Valley and then start your company in the garage. That's what Apple did, that's what Microsoft did. It was a housing affordability story. It's not that affordable to live in Silicon Valley these days, but it was one day. So I think that these are all intertwined into the future of our economy. We need to think about how we transform our economy, how we support those emergent sectors that we know we can be so great at, whether it's the clean economy, whether it's advanced manufacturing, medical technologies, digital technologies, financial services, green finance. There's so many different opportunities in that space, and then underpin that with action on climate change and action on housing affordability.
Creel, I want to come straight to you on that because I think perfect setup for something you think deeply about, which is the sustainability piece, climate change. I'm looking at words behind us tonight, and green and global are front and centre of the conversation. They're front and centre of the strategy. Can you explain to us, what does it mean for Sydney to be potentially recognised as a globally green city, and why would that matter?
It's a good question, Holly. Well, first of all, if you're not green and growing, you're ripe and rotting. And I don't think anyone wants to live in a city that way. I mean, we're going to attract a whole range of stakeholders if people want to live here, that it's a healthy environment, that we look after the environment, that we're committed to climate action. But I think it's bigger than that. If we've got this really inspiring purpose, it brings people together, it unites people, and that creates community. And what are cities without community, right? So that on front and centre I think is important, but it's also an economic imperative. Like if we want to keep Sydney, growing, there's really good economic reasons to do it. The tourists, the students, the current businesses, the potential future businesses that might start in Sydney. There's a little thing called eco decision making, right? That people actually start to make choices around all of those things based on the green credentials of the city, and we need to punch above our weight globally to attract people to our great city. So I think write the bookends. Look after the citizens, but also project a green image to the world around things we've done, like the Greenhouse Tech Hub, things that we're doing, like the Climate Action Week, and things that we're going to do, which I think is really well outlined in that economic development strategy.
I love the stark way that you paint the fork in the road. We're either green and growing or we're ripe and rotting. I know which path I'd rather pick in that. Emily, I'm watching you nod, and I was also thinking about you while I was listening to Zareh talk about the significance of Indigenous storytelling and the importance of First Nation stories being collected, being told. The visitor economy is obviously a really important component of this strategy, and a really important part, Eamon, to your point, of sort of replacing things like the coal revenue from a GDP standpoint, that we're conscious of the shift taking place over the course of the next decade. You do a lot of work and you see that demand firsthand of people seeking out authentic Aboriginal storytelling. How are you working in your role and capacity to support Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people to tell their stories?
I have the incredible privilege of being the curator of Yananurala, which is one of the key strategic projects for the City of Sydney, and it's, as the Lord Mayor said earlier, it's a 9-kilometre walk from Pyrmont to Woolloomooloo through the most iconic, images of Sydney. But it tells the important stories of that place, and I think we owe it to ourselves to also recognise that this place has always been prosperous. In fact, that's why our nation grew here. We have a long history in Sydney, and I think we need to think about that as well, that this is not just a conversation of prosperity of 250 years. We are all here because this place was prosperous and cared for thousands and thousands of years. And so those stories need to be told, and the best people to tell that is us. And so through our storytelling, we're practicing our self-determination, our nation building. What do you need to hear from us? And I think the best example was we were just completely enthralled listening to Auntie Joan earlier. And she spoke about walking. Yes, to get away from family members, warranted. But Yananurala means walk country in Gadigal language. And backstage also, the Lord Mayor mentioned to me how much she just loved walking from Redfern to Town Hall and what she would observe and what she would notice. Sydney, yes, can have a flashy reputation, but it's got a subtlety to it as well. And you find that subtlety when you slow down and you walk. And one of the most iconic things about this place, and I was mentioning this earlier in conversation, is I believe it's one of the only cities in the world that hasn't neglected our relationship to the harbour. We sit with it constantly. We stare at it. It is the campfire that we all gather around. You think of so many other cities which turn their back to the water, which disconnect from it. And it's through Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander storytellers that we can start to reconnect our relationship with here. And I think that's the starting point for having that continuous, sustainable relationship with this place. You know, when we think about Sydney's longer story of prosperity, reciprocity was key to that. So it's also what we're giving back to communities. And part of that is our time and our care.
From the long story, Eamon, you want to jump in?
Aside from sort of acknowledging, Emily, you as one of the most authentic curators, I think, of storytelling in this city, and you do such wonderful work. But we see when we look at tourism data and where did visitation come from, and tourism and international education, like basically bringing people to Sydney, really big business, right? It's a big part of our economy, and increasingly people are looking for individualised, authentic experiences. A bit of a naff way of basically saying they want to experience something that they don't think other people are experiencing. So when you talk about that walking, that slowing down, those granular moments that sort of they think, geez, I'm seeing something that no one else is seeing. Yes, framed by the incredible harbour that we all look at, but actually turning that something into a bit more individualised rather than just the generics that I think we've maybe fallen back on in the past?
Yeah, it's interesting the global conversations that we have around First Nations cultural expressions, and authenticity is that word that comes up so often. But more and more, I think I want to just replace that with self-determined. I think consumers want to know that what they're paying for is funding and supporting First Nations culture. And so we stop thinking about authentic versus inauthentic, which is a different conversation to ethical and unethical practices of culture. And we start thinking about how culture becomes a way for social enterprise to emerge. One of the beautiful things about Yananurala is I think we're actively generating the market that I want to see First Nations organisations fill. When we hire filmmakers, they're First Nations organisations. When we hire public art delivery organisations, I hope that they're First Nations in the next 10 years. And when you raise the bar for First Nations creatives, we meet it. So it's about generating the opportunities.
And then before we move on, can you say a little more about, you speak there about creating the market. How are you doing that, and what role is storytelling playing in that process?
Yananurala will deliver 5 major public artworks over the next 10 or so years, as well as smaller projects that tell the stories of First Nations people. But interestingly, the first step that we took in curating Yananurala was to acknowledge what was already there, what First Nations businesses were already practicing, what social enterprise was already there. And through this opportunity, we're able to amplify the importance and the possibilities of engaging with First Nations stories. So we're working with artists, project delivery, organisations, we're working with filmmakers, we're working with community members and storytellers. So it's building that thriving economy and driving it with story.
Kate, I want to bring you into the conversation. We're talking here about the rich history of the stories that have shaped Sydney. You're one of its newest chapters. You're about to open October. Can we say it out loud?
Oh, it's very risky. Let's do it. October.
October, all right. We've spoken it into being. Can you tell us, why Sydney for you? We introduced you. We are truly in the presence of pastry-making royalty. You have built an incredible empire with your business. It's such an incredible Australian success story. Your next chapter is Sydney. Can you talk to us about why Sydney and the way that you're thinking differently about how innovation and creativity come to life in the evolution of your own business in opening here?
Of course. So I founded LUNE back in 2012, and I had a vision just to create the best possible croissant that I could and introduce that to initially Melburnians. And I didn't really ever envisage that I would get to the point where I had currently 5 stores, 3 in Melbourne, 2 in Brisbane, over 200 staff, and I would be on the precipice of opening 2 stores in Sydney. But just to allay everyone's fears, Sydney was supposed to be before Brisbane. Very sorry it happened in the way it did, but a little thing called the global pandemic.
That felt important for you to say in this audience.
But in terms of why Sydney, first of all, I would like to say why not Sydney, because I agree with that sentiment. But back in 2018, when we had 2 stores in Melbourne, we were trying to figure out what the next step for the growth of the business would be. And up until that point, all growth had been very organic. And when an opportunity had come along, if it felt right and our intuition told us to follow it, we would. And in 2019, a developer approached us from Sydney and flew us up to have a look at a potential site. And it became immediately obvious, not just because of that particular development, but because of everything that Sydney is, and I will talk to that, that obviously Sydney was the right direction and choice for us to take. I think personally for me, while we've all acknowledged that Sydney is a very beautiful, shiny city that is famous for a party, that's not me. And whenever I come up to Sydney, I like to engage in the more cultural sides of things. Like Sydney-siders are incredibly discerning diners. And I mentioned to the Lord Mayor prior to this event that actually one of the initiatives that she put in place in her tenure as mayor enabled my brother to open one of the first small bars in the city when that law passed. So particularly for my family, initiatives and culture that's occurred in Sydney has been very impactful, and it's personally a city that I love to spend time in. So yeah, we discovered back in 2019. We were supposed to open in 2020, and now we are literally 10 weeks away from finally opening the doors, which is very exciting.
And speaking of 2020, though, let's not dwell too much in that period, but we talk a little bit about the challenge of getting people out of their homes now, the idea of what does it take to create an experience that will make people line up round the block, as you've become all too known for doing so. Can you speak to us a little bit about what you believe makes a great experience and how you're thinking about bringing your experience to life in Sydney?
Sure. So I'm going to use ASOP as an example. I think they're an incredible Australian-founded business that's found deserved international success widely. I think the magic of them is that you can walk into any ASOP store in the world and it feels unique to the country, the city, and the land that it exists in. But it's also got this genealogy and bones that feel very uniquely ASOP. So you know you're in an ASOP store, you know you will receive a premium experience, and at the end of it, you know that the product you take home will be exceptional. And while we don't use ASOP as inspiration, I do hope that there are parallels there with LUNE, that we don't want to create some cookie cutter, feel the same, look the same space, branding. We want something to feel unique and authentic to the city that we take it to. But when somebody walks into a LUNE store, for example, someone who's from Sydney that might have been to our Melbourne or Brisbane stores, when they walk into their Sydney store eventually, they will know that it's a LUNE store, but they will feel like it's their own. And we do that through a number of different ways, but obviously the first way is the design of the space. So we've been working very closely with our architects to draw in materials that are local and feel like part of Sydney's heritage and its future. So a lot of the stores in Melbourne are very brutalist, with a lot of use of poured concrete, and while that will be somewhat of a feature in the Sydney stores, we're introducing much warmer materials to reflect that sandstone, which is so unique and special to Sydney's famous architecture in the city.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, speaking of one of Sydney's newest stories, Michael, you are one of its case studies of global excellence. What you're doing at Q-CTRL in quantum is truly world-leading, and it's a great example of, I think, what good looks like in this strategy, in the sense of a precinct success story. You know, you, Sydney, spin out a great commercialisation story, a great series of partnerships that have enabled you to do what you're doing. Being at the forefront of this leading work, working with industry on case studies from banking to transport, can you talk to us a little bit about what the power of critical mass looks like in building an ecosystem that underpins this strategy? Because I want to get into some of the guts of how do we bring this to life, and I think there's great lessons to be learnt from what you've done.
Well, thanks. For those of you who don't know me, I am a real-life quantum physicist. I think in a way my appearance on this stage is an encapsulation of your question, right? You can hear from my accent, I am not from Australia originally, I'm an American. I moved here in 2010 to join a really exceptional community that was building in research. At the time I was an academic, a professor at the University of Sydney. I've since become an entrepreneur. But this question of precincts comes up a lot. And for those of you who know me, you'll know I don't usually stick to the script and give happy answers. So I want to give you a real insight, right? The idea that a precinct fixes everything because of collaboration in air quotes or bump zones if you deal with architecture, it's really nonsense, right? That's not why it works. The reason it works is because when a government takes a policy perspective to set up precincts, they're communicating two things. They're communicating one thing outwardly and one thing inwardly. On the outward side, the communication is that there is ambition. When you talk about a business like mine that employs hundreds of scientists and engineers, software developers, business people, marketers, these are people who want intellectual stimulation. They want to be surrounded by people who are not necessarily just like them, but share interests, share objectives of learning new things. And if there is a perception that a city sells nothing but cocaine and property, it's extremely hard to attract those people. So I told you, I don't. So the precinct tells the world and all the people that we want to hire and retain that there is something here for them to build a life, right? It's all about the way you live in the place and, of course, work there. The other part is the way the government communicates to itself. Because any storied institution, any municipal or state government that has lived for a while, as long as the City of Sydney, can get set in its ways. This is a globally common phenomenon. When there is a precinct strategy, in this case Tech Central for us, where our headquarters is, it communicates to the government that perhaps things should be done a little differently, that there's an excuse to do things differently than has been done before. Now, we set out not to build something way out in the sticks, but rather to set up our R&D headquarters in the middle of Sydney. This is not common. You typically think about land near the airport or the Western Sydney Airport precinct. We said, no, we need to be right in the middle of Sydney. We ended up undertaking a cold shell renovation of a 1930s heritage-listed engineering building. And I can tell you flat out, I would never have done that had I not had the certainty behind me that what we were doing aligned with the strategic priority of the city, and of course the state government as well. Having that backing gave us the confidence to say, look, we're going to take it on the chin and we're going to go through a very complicated approvals process for putting this advanced technology R&D facility in a residential R1 zone neighborhood. We were very pleased to get through this process relatively unscathed. But again, we wouldn't have been able to do it had we not had the certainty that everybody in government knew that what we were proposing was aligned with the strategic priority, right? So precinct can have these massive impacts in ways that we may not expect.
Absolutely. Creel, I want to come to you on that because I know you're passionate about this piece on partnerships that Michael's touched on there too, that ability for this signal of certainty to meaningfully move business, but that importance of government coming together with the business community, with academia, with civil society. Can you talk to us a bit about the partnership, the thinking, the approach that's going to be necessary to bring this strategy to life?
That's a good question. I think when it comes to sustainability, which is a field that we've chosen to be in, I think climate catastrophe doesn't have any borders. So you've got to realise, and it's not just about competitive advantage. You're saying, okay, how do we actually make sure that everyone contributes? So Greenhouse, the tech hub, again, a precinct where we've sort of got this amazing community of 3,000 people leaning into to climate action. I think is a good example of that. But partnership-wise, it was through a generous accommodation grant from the City of Sydney that made Greenhouse possible. But there's been so many other parts of government. There's been parts of corporates. There's been the startup community. There's venture capitalists. There's other investors. There's not-for-profits that have all leaned in to create this. We couldn't have dreamed to be able to create such an ecosystem just ourselves. So I think people leaning in, collaborating rather than competing. That whole 1 and 1 equals, hopefully 10, is really so important if we are going to make a difference to climate change.
I mean, I was watching you nod when Michael was talking, and one of the things that I think is worth exploring with you is, it might surprise people to see light rail so front and centre of an economic strategy, to have watched a light rail video tonight. Why is that such a central component of this strategy and this vision?
Yeah. Well, for two reasons. Let's start with the transport reason, because getting people to the jobs is a pretty important economic sort of imperative. And we know that we need to do that without using cars as much as possible. Sustainable transport is going to be really critical to the growth of a dense urban economy like the inner city. And light rail has a really, really critical role to play, and you only need to look outside to see how much it makes a difference to people doing those short sort of interim trips. I caught the light rail from my office down near Wynyard down here because it's super quick and convenient to do it that way. And light rail, if we were to do it along Parramatta Road and out to Green Square,
opens up all these interesting opportunities for origination, but also destination along those places. It creates the opportunity to put jobs along that corridor of Parramatta Road and for them to be nice and close and easy drop-offs. My job's at RPA, just in Camperdown, but I'll just hop on the light rail and pop down to Tech Central to have a chat to Michael, and then, you know, that's easy enough for me to do in an hour and have a coffee and come back. So there's a transport reason why we need to do it. There's also an important place reason why we need to do it. I don't know if anybody's, well, I know a lot of people have driven down Parramatta Road recently. It's probably the worst road in Sydney. It's not a street, it's not a road, it's a strode. It's designed as a high street and then it's treated like a sewer. It is truly an awful place. You know, it is not wide enough for the amount of traffic that we expect to take, but it also has destroyed and decayed this beautiful high street that was once a place for people, not for cars. You know, actually the time of cars on Parramatta Road is the anomaly. For tens of thousands of years, it's been a corridor of First Nations travel for people, and in colonial times it was a place where people gathered to shop and to see their friends and to spend time and to loiter and to gather and to chat. And then about 40 years ago, we decided to turn it into just a dusty, hot, unpleasant, noisy, loud place. And it's cut communities in half. If you live on the north side of Parramatta Road, trying to get to the south side is awful. If you're trying to get from one end to the other, it's awful. If you're trying to go in any diagonal direction, it's probably awful as well. But genuinely, I think the opportunity that light rail offers us to rethink that corridor, and yes, we'll put a lot more houses there and a lot of people will find affordable homes to live in that corridor, but we will just change, we'll re-stitch one of the biggest scars in our city and fix one of the worst roads.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, that got a round of applause. That resonated, that description of that daily commute experience, I can tell. Emily, we're talking a bit there about the sort of journey to work. I want to talk a bit about the idea of inclusive employment. And you touched on earlier the importance of the role that public art and storytelling can create in self-determination, can create in economic opportunities, these powerful stories of resilience and of challenge and the like. You speak a little bit about the opportunities that you hope from an inclusive standpoint that the City of Sydney can be a hub for in an ongoing sense. So I think there's an acknowledgement in this strategy that there's work to be done to make sure that prosperity is spread more inclusively over the journey identified in the next decade.
Yes, I think this may sound really offensive, and I hope it doesn't, but often strategies can bore us, but stories really inspire us. So it's when you find what the practice and the application of the strategy is, it kind of fills our cup and makes us feel really inspired to live in this place. The opportunities that I hope to see, I remember back a few years ago, it was an image that the Lord Mayor showed earlier in her presentation of the launch of Borough by one-year artist Judy Watson. And it's probably pictured in one of the most iconic locations internationally, on the Tarpian lawn, standing in relationship to Sydney Opera House. On that site there are memories of countless community gatherings. Bennelong once had his hut there, the first Aboriginal house that was given by the government. And I thought when I was there, watching that opening ceremony, the launch of it, I thought, this is another history added to that place. It was the most beautiful day. It was led by community, the most beautiful performances, a picnic just sprawled out over this area, which most community members hadn't connected with. But to simply see your stories positioned in a place provides this invitation to be there. And that's, I think, the important thing of arts and culture, is that it democratises our public spaces. It says you belong here, you should be here, you should come here. And I'm always conscious to balance my considerations of curating, not just with tourism, but with people, like everyone in this room. Like to feel like a tourist in your own city, to feel that sense of wonder and delight is really, really special. We have incredible festivals, South by Southwest. These are huge moments, but little moments every day are really special for bringing us back into the CBD and feeling a connection beyond just your commute.
Absolutely. Kate, I'm watching you nod, listening to that story, bringing people back into the CBD. We've talked about partnerships, about place, about people, all of which converge in what you're doing here in Sydney at the moment. What stands out for you as something, you know, that you reflect on in that kind of 3 Ps as being a critical component of something we need to be really mindful of for entrepreneurs to be able to continue to choose this city as a place to bring their creative experiences to?
Well, I love what you just touched on with creating those little moments, because I'm sorry, I'm going to veer off the topic of conversation here briefly, but the reason that I created LUNE was this idea that while not changing the world in a big way, you can change someone's world in a very small way by just giving them something that takes them away from their troubles and makes them feel good for 10 minutes. And I think that there's a lot of power in those little moments, and so LUNE adds up a lot of little moments to hopefully make thousands of people happy every day. But entrepreneurs, in terms of activating cities, I think, I mean, not to downplay the digital importance, but for me, human connection is really important. Having a conversation face to face with someone, touch and feel and experiencing it in person. And for entrepreneurs to be able to draw people into our cities, to those high streets and the villages, to get them out of their homes, engaging with their communities, which I am suspecting our ancestors were quite a lot better at than we are now based on our connection to our phones. But I believe in creating real experiences that bring us together as a community again. And I think it's actually the responsibility of an entrepreneur to create those opportunities and experiences to allow our society to continue to engage together as communities.
I love those call outs for both the power of story and the importance of small moments. Michael, I want to come to you and talk about one of the things I love about this strategy is its honesty, both its confident ambition, like really acknowledging the strength that Sydney has to be able to be. I mean, the Lord Mayor detailed in her presentation an extraordinary overachievement on an ambitious last strategy that sets the foundation to be able to be this bold with this one. But it's also real about we cannot be complacent. And I think about, again, quantum as a little case study here. I know I've heard you talk passionately on a number of occasions about the fact that we have been world leading. It's part of why you're here and why you moved your family here from the United States to lead this work. But the world's catching up. In your context, what does this strategy need to deliver on to maintain Quantum's edge and Sydney's edge as a place for those innovative knowledge workers to continue to choose to call home and set up their businesses?
Look, it's true. For many years, Sydney had a massive net inbound migration of talent in the quantum technology sector. I came at one point at the University of Sydney, among the 5 senior faculty members, only one of those members was Australian. The rest of us came from somewhere else. That comes from a long history that predates even the existence of the field of quantum technology. It comes from serendipity of certain academics who gave it a go and built teams at UNSW. Bob Clark was there and built what is now the Center for Quantum Computer Technology. All these things happened over time and accumulated to the point that Sydney became a real destination. I came, as I said before. And then when it was time to transition from purely academic science, from fundamental research, over to the development of commercial technology and the sale of products, I decided to basically ignore every single bit of advice that I was given, which was relocate to San Francisco and do it here. Because the critical edge that I had, in my view, was the unique talent base that I could draw from. And within a matter of just a few months after we got our initial funding, have of order 20 world-leading experts in my special discipline. My discipline is a niche called quantum control engineering. It's making things that obey these very exotic rules of physics, making them do useful work. I was one of roughly a dozen academics, senior academics in the world who specialized in this. One of the others was at the ANU, so there was this real growth of local capability, and I got it all.
And Michael, can I ask, as you're telling this story, can you give us an example of what that looks like in a day-to-day use case, just to take us to the context of what your brilliant brain does?
One of the things that we do is we build new kinds of sensors that leverage quantum physics to give you better performance, to let you see things you couldn't see. And the use case is quite important. It's been growing in importance of late given global geopolitics. How do you navigate when you don't have GPS? We always, I bet most of you got here on Uber or used Waze or some location-based service. What happens when there is no GPS? Now, if there's no GPS for you, it's a little inconvenient. If there's no GPS for an airliner or a cargo ship or a military vessel, this is potentially catastrophic. So we have some really extraordinary technology enabled by our specialization in quantum control that is now delivering quantum navigation solutions into the AUKUS trilateral partnership. We are in air quotes, preferred provider in this three-way defense partnership, selling into global markets, not just a local niche, but providing and competing in the United States, in the UK, in the European Union, and in other places. So there are real things that can reshape the economy, all coming from what we've started to build and we've grown here. Now, to the very genesis of your question, there is always the dynamic tension of why don't you just relocate, flip up to the United States, why don't you move there? Now, we have lots of reasons why we think this is the right place. But to invoke Benjamin Franklin and his words at the Constitutional Convention, a republic if you can keep it, right? This is an opportunity if you can keep it. It means that the city, the state, the Commonwealth government need to express an interest in capitalizing on this generational opportunity to deliver pride and prosperity in Sydney, in broader Australia. The opportunity is here, and it does require that the private sector consider investment. There is a huge investment gap acknowledged in Australia, publicized by the Tech Council at growth stage equity investment. Something like 90% of my last fundraise came from overseas. Australian investors have not expressed interest in what we have to offer, even though we've delivered, 400x growth in the last 6 years. It requires all parts of the society to embrace something different. We're going to do things differently than we have before, and that's the only way you get different outcomes, so we're excited about that.
Eamon, jump in.
And to your point you made earlier around the role that government plays in this, for something like quantum that is, in many instances, many years away from making, it's going to be $1 trillion industry, and I'm confident that Sydney's going to be at the heart of that, but it's probably a long time away. It requires government to show confidence in these sorts of things, to back in the private sector, to know if I make a patient investment in this stuff, the government's going to have my back and the ecosystem around this is going to have my back. And that's why a strategy like this is very critical to support that.
It's so important to say we're not asking for handouts like I want you to fund my failing business. That's not the idea. The idea is that government as demand generator is extraordinarily powerful. It's what I did when I was working at DARPA in the United States funding R&D and technology development. It's something where we're very excited about local municipal government all the way up to Commonwealth leaning into the opportunity that's here.
Creel, it's a really important point in your world too, in the sense of both the role of government and this finance gap that's sort of acknowledged. It is the reason we see a lot of Australian entrepreneurs go overseas, but it's also that critical gap between strategy and reality of the strategy being delivered on. It's not really spoken to in the strategy, but sustainable finance is going to be a really important component. Where would you assess sort of where Sydney's at in the maturity it's going to need for the goals that are outlined in this strategy?
Yeah, I think Michael says it well. From the tech sector generally, it's pretty underwhelming. A lot of early stage, a lot of finance at the back end, but there's a missing middle, and that's very true in sustainable finance. But I was certainly chuffed reading the strategy to see that green finance was really fundamental, and I think it's for two reasons. First, on the macro side, the financial services industry is one of our biggest employers. And we're going to get left behind if we've been powered by the super industry for so long, and they haven't been that active as investors. That's happening around the world. There's a real flight to stop investing in highly polluting industries, look after sustainable companies. That hasn't happened to the degree in Australia, but it's coming. And if our financial services industry doesn't see the winds of change, we're going to be left behind, like we probably are going to be on the AI front. So, that could be a big hit to our jobs. On the micro front, which I work in a bit more, Investible, we were the very first early stage climate tech fund in Australia, and now pleasingly there's 14 other funds that are in that. So I think we're pretty well served finding the future Q-CTRL companies in the climate tech space, but they're all going to go to the US. There's the Inflationary Reduction Act that Biden put in that's just sucked a huge amount of the talent to the US. So we have to look after, and I think our finance industry has to really grow up to say, how do we support some of these really high-tech industries that don't just need equity, that they need a combination of debt and equity, and those products don't exist in our country right now.
And so what do you want to see? What's your call to action, I guess, to industry and government in the room tonight?
Well, the big end of town, the investors, the government, and then the startup community needs to get together and get a fit-for-purpose strategy to take companies so we don't lose them to overseas.
Eamon, I love it. You're opening the strategy as though you're looking to reference a particular page, which is great.
Got to get my stats right. Yep.
We love that. But I do want to come to you in closing too and bookend this conversation. We opened sort of talking about the challenges that you saw for cities of the world and for Sydney specifically. You and I are at an event on Monday night with Business Event Sydney where the Premier got up and spoke so passionately about Sydney specifically. And to quote, he said, "Everyone in this country has an interest in this city sparkling." Can you just bring us to a close? Because I think one of the beautiful threads of this strategy is also about Sydney globally and Sydney nationally and its significance on both of those stages. Why is what we've talking about tonight so much bigger than exactly where we're sitting in Sydney itself tonight?
Right. Yeah. Well, let's start by saying what Sydney isn't. And, we joke that Sydney is a party town or it's a place where the only things we do is property and cocaine. What Sydney really is like the most important, couple of square kilometres in the entire country. This city of Sydney local government area alone is 6% of the national economy. The financial services sector in this CBD is worth as much as the Western Australian mining sector. It's worth a lot more than the Western Sydney mining sector. Half of the people living in this city were either born overseas or their parents were born overseas. So we're an incredibly multicultural society, and of course we are home to the longest surviving civilization on the planet. Half of the population of this city have a bachelor's degree or more. So what are we? Well, we're a really well-educated, really diverse, really smart, interesting place that's really, really important to the rest of the country. We're the gateway to the rest of the world. Where Sydney goes, the rest of the country follows, and that's not just some conceptual thing. The people that come and join this great country come through Sydney, through this gateway. So what happens to Sydney is critically important to the rest of the country because we're the one that's going to solve those big problems that I was talking about. Housing affordability is, the edge of the knife is Sydney. Climate change, whether it's green finance, whether it's technologies that are going to solve climate change, they're going to be invented in Sydney. And the future of the economy is Sydney taking on a much outsized role, not just 6% of the economy, but much greater in terms of economic growth to replace some of those other sectors like that coal mining that are going away. So where Sydney goes, the rest of the country follows, and that's why they need us to sparkle, and that's also why they need us to talk about our city not as a place of property and other things, but actually, but as a place of amazing Americans who come here to create, trillion-dollar industries, because this is the place where that happens. Like a place where rich, culture and experience is combined with cutting-edge technologies, because where else in the world would you do that but in Sydney?
Hear, hear. Well said. Absolutely. Well, it's been a wonderfully wide-ranging conversation on entrepreneurship, inclusion, sustainability, science and innovation, and our economic future as the City of Sydney. Can you join me in thanking my phenomenal panellists, Kate, Emily, Creel, Eamon, and Michael? Thank you all so much. Thank you. Keep the applause going for them as they leave stage. Thank you all so much. Now, we're not done yet. We have a very special component of our program tonight. I'm going to introduce you to 3 groundbreaking Sydney leaders who are going to show us how the vision and outcomes from the City of Sydney's new economic development strategy for 2025 to 2035 are being realised already and are going to continue to be realised into the next decade. Now, we've set them a really high bar task. They've got only 3 minutes to come and tell you their story and to share 3 images with you that do a brilliant job of painting a picture. It's rapid fire, so you and I are going to be the timekeepers together. You can see the very large clock that is there. They've been practicing all afternoon, so we're going to welcome them up one by one. Are you ready though? I thought, yeah, come on. Amp it up for them. They were joking earlier they maybe needed a Xanax before we got underway, so we've really got to make sure we're here in support for them, all right? So, let's get underway. To talk to us about sustainability, we've got Harry Guinness, who is the head of Net Zero at the Greenhouse Climate Tech Hub. Welcome, Harry. Take it away.
A 5-minute ride up George Street will take you to Greenhouse, Australia's largest climate tech hub. An ecosystem of over 100 companies committed to climate action, VCs, tech entrepreneurs and advocates. Greenhouse exists to catalyse climate action. Globally, via our innovation platform, through which we've partnered with the World Economic Forum to help decarbonise the global steel supply chain. And with ARENA to find and scale ultra-low-cost solar solutions. Locally, we convened climate initiatives to scale technology, like those technologies driven by our members. Let me highlight 2 for you. Lone Bio's microbial seed treatments help plants take CO2 from the atmosphere and transform it into the most stable forms of soil carbon, whilst improving soil health, plant yields, and farm resiliency. NRN, a sustainable finance solution, partners with energy companies and solar installers to provide no-cost solar and battery solutions. If we want to become a sustainable finance hub, we need 1,000 NRNs to bloom. Next slide, please. Sydney has all the capabilities one could want if designing a global innovation hub. 5 of the world's top universities, a regional finance hub, and our greatest asset, our people. And yet, each year, hundreds of founders leave our shores to London or New York in search of finance, talent, customers, and dare I say it, relocation. Global climate weeks act as beacons for our brightest minds and our deepest pockets. Inspired by this, Greenhouse convened the first ever Sydney Climate Action Week in May of this year, with support from the City of Sydney. CoreSid inspired 230 partner organisations, 115 events, and over 6,000 attendees. And this was in year 1. Imagine what we can achieve in year 10. And I don't mean what we can achieve in terms of attendance. I mean, what can we achieve in terms of impact? What can we achieve in terms of systems change and solving complex problems together? CoreSid 2025 will be held from March 10. Let's use it to make Sydney a global climate innovation hub. Next slide, please. Complex problems define the climate challenge: behavioural change, supply chain collaboration, scaling climate tech. No single entity can solve these complex problems, but everyone has a role to play. Sydney Climate Action Week demonstrated the power of partnership and co-innovation. Greenhouse is now asking how we can apply this to lessons elsewhere. This year, we'll be focusing our energies, our tech hub and our platform on some of these challenges. Let us know if you want to collaborate. Thank you.
Well done. 1 second to spare. Great job, Harry. 1 second remaining on the clock. Let's keep the applause going as we welcome up Professor Julie Kearney, the Pro Vice Chancellor of Research and Enterprise, University of Sydney. Woo!
When our beautiful Sydney sandstone quad building was constructed in Camperdown, universities were a very different kind of place. At that time, if you were a professor, in between your classes, you might sit and think deeply about your topic area, maybe publish a couple of papers in your summer break. But we're not sitting under apple trees anymore. These days, our leading professors are undertaking incredible research, leading large teams to develop groundbreaking new technologies in areas like quantum physics, in healthcare, in energy technologies, and they're doing them in very expensive clean rooms and incredible medical research facilities using supercomputers that we have on campus, which cost a lot of money. And in fact, we've built the scale of research at universities so far that we now do 1/3 of all of Australia's R&D in our higher education sector. And we have an obligation to make sure that that money is being spent to develop life-changing technologies that are actually used in society and benefit the lives of people like you and me. On the next slide, you'll see some logos of some companies that have all been spun out of the University of Sydney, which might be a surprise to some of you. Some examples here, Kenoxis Therapeutics in the middle there. It's a company that are developing a molecule that's an oxytocin receptor. That's the love drug. And they're trialling it to study whether it can be used to treat opioid addiction. International crisis with no known treatment now. It's also being trialled for treating the aggressive symptoms associated with psychiatric illnesses like schizophrenia and dementia. This, if successful, will allow us to care for our loved ones in our homes for longer. And then we've got Endoaxiom in the top left here. That's a brand new startup looking at producing an oral insulin pill. The way that works is they've got little nanoparticle nanocarriers with a coating that dissolves and delivers the drug only if your blood sugar goes above a certain level. Just incredible technology being developed just down the road in Camperdown at the University of Sydney. We should be proud that this work is happening in Sydney. We've also, the examples I just gave you are both pharma examples, but we have battery technologies, we have quantum tech spin-outs, we have organisations working in a range of different areas. On the next slide, I can see this threatening clock ticking, so I'm just going to leave you with this last slide. This is our Sydney Biomedical Accelerator being built in Tech Central right now, completely focused on translational biomedical research. We're excited about what we're doing now, but the future is even brighter.
Oof. Well done, well done. Really, that was like watching Emma McKeon swim backstroke. Really brought it home against the clock there. That was great. Now, to close us out tonight, we have a really special treat. This won't be a countdown clock. This will be a performance you won't forget. Many of you will know the Bankstown Poetry Slam. It's an inclusive alternative to the traditional kind of pub scene where people who are increasingly seeking more meaningful connections and social experiences throughout the city gather. Early this year, I was hearing from Zareh, 2,000 people packed this hall to watch the Slam Poetry National Finals. It was an incredible experience from all that I've been told. It is now a must-see event on the Sydney calendar. You're soon going to understand why as we get to hear a performance from the founder and artistic director of the Bankstown Poetry Slam. Please give a very warm welcome to Sarah Mansour.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Holly. I just want to gauge the audience. How many of you like the bully? Make some noise. Make some noise if you like the bully. How many of you have been to Bankstown? Okay. How many of you have had the bully in Bankstown? Okay. Oh, that's a bit rough. All right, that's okay. That's the next goal. Well, luckily for most of you then, this poem features both the bully and Bankstown. My Australia is walking through the streets of Punchbowl with the smell of freshly roasted Lebanese coffee kissing the Asian bakeries good morning. The eucalyptus towers overhead and the frangipanis scent my breath as we sing the unofficial national anthem. I come from a land down under, living from beat to beat, bumping down the streets with 2-pack on our tongues, and yeah, we're headed for the beach. Water, so unapologetically salty to the eyes, but we take it in our stride, remembering all the lessons at Greenacre Pool and at school when Cronulla hit high tide. My Australia is barbecues, or as my dad still says, barbecue. Meat sizzling on the fire, homemade tabbouleh and tomato sauce, pavlova cake and knefe, the perfect cultural dichotomy. And it's not hard to see, no matter our creed, we always rep our team, #WanderersFC. This country will never be tainted by cafe sieges. We will always ride together from the mountains where the bushfires rage. We stand together down to the shore where the lifesavers age. Under this great southern sun, my Australia is one where women wear their saris and their colourful hijabs proudly. Men don sweat-stained blue collars like war badges. You can get the best fur in Sydney, the realest Lebanese and Chinese, and you feel at ease because no one judges your garlic breath or the parsley stuck in your teeth. It's a space where you can find the most authentic spices in shops where signs in foreign languages sit like jeweled crowns atop their doors. It's neighbours passing hand-rolled food over the fence and always saying hello. It is all the Stoic traditions. It is Stoic. A community that's been hardened by media headlines. It is targeted, it is judged, it is 3 a.m. sirens and perceived thugs, but it's also where the call to prayer gently interludes with the ringing of church bells. See, it's coexistence, artistic resistance, like the 4 Elements Youth Hip Hop Festival and the largest poetry slam in the country. Shameless plug. It's my dad's voice. 35 years on, accent thick with resilience and warm like an autumn breeze, smelling of petrol and truck smoke and all the forgotten things, all the za'atar and the taine and the crushed petals that were once dreams, saying to me, we are lucky. And in fact, we are lucky. It's not perfect, but it's home. It will never be perfect, but it will always be home. My Australia is home when the rest of the world says no. Thank you.
Woo! Zareh Mansour! Woo! Wow. Wow. What a brilliant encapsulation of the power of storytelling and making moments memorable that we heard from some of our panellists earlier. Can you join me in thanking all 3 of our presenters? Thank you, Harry. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Sarah. Well, finally tonight, of course, we mentioned this is a conversation. We want you to have your say. So before we close, I want to share a QR code that you can scan that will take you to the economic development strategy we've been in deep discussion around tonight and give you the opportunity to make your comments, to leave your opinions, to let us know your feedback. Please share it widely, invite others to do the same. You can also visit city.sydney/economic.strategy if the QR code for any reason is not working for you. Please, we encourage you to share and to engage in a dialogue. This is intended to be a living document that very much has your contribution and voice in it. With that, I'd like to thank the Lord Mayor, the speakers, our panellists, and all of you, the audience, for coming tonight to be a part of this important and exciting conversation about what is driving Sydney's future prosperity. It has been an utter delight to be your MC this evening. With that, as you leave, please just a reminder that as you exit Town Hall, please do so using the doors to the left, to the right. Here's to a very exciting and prosperous future for all that lies ahead in Sydney. Thank you so much.